Hi there, everyone. All right, well, welcome to today's Community Connection event. We're going to be talking about safer at home socialization, the best ways to socialize your puppies. Socializing your puppies really sets them up for success by creating confident and happy dogs. And that in turn sort of increases the likelihood that they're going to be staying in happy homes and out of the shelter system. So this is a topic that's, near and dear to our hearts here at the shelter. And so I just want to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Robyn. I'm a member of the training team here at the shelter. And I have a Bachelor of Science in Zoology and about 4 years of professional training experience. As far as puppies go, I've taught a lot of puppy classes now through the shelter, and I played a small part in bringing up my own puppy. So you're going to see her later in this presentation and some of the videos. And then my supervisor is also here. Donna, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Donna Mansicle. I'm also one of the trainers here at the Santa Fe Animal Shelter. Very excited to be here with y'all today. Robyn's going to be doing the majority of the presentation, but I am here if you have any questions in the chat or anything like that. So.
Great, thanks, Donna. And then before we go to the next slide, I just want to kind of point out all of the different logos we've got at the bottom of the slide. Every one of those is something that we're affiliated with as a team. So it's really great to be able to be a part of such a well-educated behavior and training team here at the shelter. All right, so just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. First, the class is being recorded for training purposes. So we'll probably be posting this up later, and you'll see that in the follow-up email that we send. As we go through the presentation, I ask that you just hold your questions and comments until you're prompted to ask them. If you are worried about forgetting your question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat, and Donna will let me know about it during those question sections. So that's totally fine. You can go ahead and do that. And then as we go through the presentation, you all will be muted, and that's just to kind of minimize the feedback that happens when we have so many different devices here. And we'll go ahead and ask you to unmute during those question sections if you do have any questions. But again, you're welcome to type in the chat if you're more comfortable doing that. And I am going to also ask you all to turn off your videos going forward. And that's, again, just to kind of minimize that bandwidth that we're using on the internet. So if you can all turn off your videos, and Donna and I will go ahead and turn ours off as well. All right. So our community here at the shelter is really a life-saving community. And that means that animals that come to us are given the best chance that they can to get adopted. Our shelter is, one of the best shelters out there for puppies. We have really strict safety protocols and really excellent care for both their emotional and physical well-being. So we're really only able to be that way and do those things because of the support of our community. So thank you all so much for coming to this presentation. And if you volunteer or donate or foster, all of those things, you make this happen. So we really, really appreciate that. We also want to give a huge thank you to Purina for making community connection events like this possible through their generous financial support. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is just an overview of the topics that we're going to discuss today. So we'll talk about what socialization really is, and why it's so important. And we'll talk about the best ways to do socialization. And especially we're going to talk about how to do this while we're all social distancing still. All right, so first, what is socialization, right? It's the process through which our puppies learn to differentiate between what is safe and what is unsafe. So when dogs are first entering the world, right, everything is new. Sights, smells, touches, all of that is strange, right? And so it's our responsibility to help our puppies learn how to safely navigate the world with confidence. And it's really important that we think about how we are exposing them to new experiences, right? We want it to be very intentional. We want it to be very positive. And we do want to make sure that we are, as much as possible, getting our socialization in between that window that they have between 6 weeks of age and 16 weeks of age. So that's really when they're making these kind of judgments, basically, about what is safe, what is unsafe, what they're learning. So it's really important that you start your puppy out well, because after that window of socialization, it can be a little bit more difficult to teach them those things. All right, so first we're going to just talk a little bit about what is not socialization. So simply exposing your puppy to new experiences is not necessarily a guarantee, right, that they're going to have a good time and decide that it is a safe experience. So it's a good idea to make sure that it's positive, right, positive exposure, not just exposure. And then the other thing you really want to look out for is flooding or forcing a puppy to kind of endure an experience that's scary to them. Um, that's definitely, what you can see here in this picture. The puppy is being held out towards the kid and being pushed into that situation, and doesn't really have a lot of ability to move away or freedom in that situation. So he might be scared, but he's being forced to be there. So that's something that we definitely want to avoid while we're trying to socialize our puppies. All right. So socialization is important for a lot of different reasons. It really does shape your dog's ability to adapt to an environment that changes, right? Everything going on around us is always changing. And so that's a really important skill for our dogs to have as they get older. It also builds their confidence with new experiences, right? So a dog that is very well socialized will be confident going into a new situation, versus a dog that maybe didn't have that much socialization will be a little bit more fearful. And this can have lifelong implications. It really does last throughout their lives. So sometimes behavior problems that we're seeing later on, those are because of a lack of socialization, right? You hear that a lot, kind of with the rescue dogs and things from the shelter as well, right? They a lot of them tend to be fearful, and a big portion of that is because of that lack of socialization when they were young. All right. So does anyone have any questions about specifically what socialization is, or why socialization is important? All right. Well, if you think of any questions, you can go ahead and add those in the chat, and Donna will let me know about that. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the best way to properly socialize your puppy. So the first thing is going at your puppy's pace. So letting your dog choose to engage with the new person or the place or object, whatever it is. So really thinking about how much happier you might be in social situations that you choose to be in, right? Versus those that you're forced into, right? Those family reunions that you can't avoid. You don't have as good of a time, right? Than as if you want to be there. So your puppies really feel the same way in those types of situations. Socialization is really most effective when your puppy is comfortable, which means taking things nice and slow at first. We'll show you a video in just a bit about kind of how to tell if your puppy is comfortable, but definitely, giving your puppy the choice and the freedom of movement, like what's listed on the slide here, that's going to be really key in a good socialization experience. The next thing is to keep it really short. Usually 10 minutes is plenty of time to kind of involve your puppy in a new experience. And of course, that's provided that your puppy is having a good time. If you notice your puppy isn't having a good time, you can take them out of that situation earlier than 10 minutes. That's just kind of a maximum that we're looking at here. And it's really important to end socialization experiences while your puppy is still, calm and enjoying themselves in that experience. And that will kind of cement it in their minds that that something was awesome, right? Instead of something that started out cool and fun, but then got too exciting or too scary. And next, it's really important to make it a very positive experience for your puppy. So you can use rewards that your dog loves, and that can be treats, it can be play, praise, whatever your puppy really, really loves. That's what you should use when you're socializing with them. It's a great idea to experiment with different treat types to see what your puppy likes the best. Oftentimes, real meat, right? Things like chicken or deli meat, hot dogs, things like that are really high value treats for your puppy. And those can be really good ones to reward with. And it's a good idea to make sure that you're only giving your puppy treats as a reward for calm and relaxed behaviors in new situations. If you start rewarding your puppy for getting really worked up and excited, or for barking or jumping, anything like that, they might think that that's the best way to react. So we really want to make sure that we're rewarding the calm so they take that concept with them in other new situations. So here in this video, we are kind of watching a dog learn about bubble wrap. That's what's on the floor there. So she will step on the bubble wrap and gets a nice treat. And that's really what we're looking for, just having a good time, stepping on the bubble wrap, making it make the little poppy noises and getting treats for it. You can see her tail's wagging and she's having a great time with that. And we keep the session really, really short, just ending it just after this one. And you can see the treats that I'm giving her are hot dogs in this video. And so that's a good high value treat for a lot of puppies. All right, so this slide here, we're kind of summarizing what it looks like, right? So it's a good idea to have that socialization activity, give a treat, and teach them to enjoy it. And then it's a really good idea to let your puppy come away from that situation, rest, sleep, and then go back and do it again later. Dogs actually learn while they sleep, right? Just like we do. They're kind of making those neural pathways and connecting those memories. So it's a really good idea to, as you're going through the socialization activities, not try to overdo it with lots of exposures in one day, but giving them time to rest and learn in between. All right, so we're going to talk about now how to tell if your puppy is having fun, right, and having a good time. That's really important in socialization exercises. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you all.
You can tell your dog is having fun by looking for consent and other body language cues. Consent simply means that your dog chooses to move towards and engage the person or activity at hand. You can use the pet pause rule to check for consent as well, including pauses in between petting and using those pauses to see if your dog moves towards or away from you. Dogs that are having fun show bendiness in their body. Their elbows may be a little bit more bent. There may be some curvature from side to side in their backs. They'll lean into handling, and their face and bodies remain very relaxed. The body looks loose, soft, and the eyes tend to be blinky or squinty.
All right, so you could see right at the end there, Donna brought their hands away, and the puppy in the video looked kind of tense, right? So Donna didn't put their hands back on the dog, just let her walk away. And that's kind of what we're looking for in our socialization activities, is really just that freedom of movement and allowing our dogs to go away if they need to. So puppies do have fear periods occasionally throughout their socialization window, but that's entirely normal, right? They're going to be afraid of new things. So the best bet is really just to focus on helping your puppy through that situation, either by getting them out of the situation if you can, or making it as positive as possible by giving them lots and lots of treats. It's important to try to avoid pushing your dog into something that maybe they were okay with before, but now they're not, right? So it's really important, even if they had a good experience with something, if they're showing signs that they're worried or they don't want to engage, it's good to just go along with that, go at your puppy's pace and keep them comfortable. These fear periods do pass and your puppy will become more confident again. So some ways to tell if your puppy is fearful. You can kind of see in this picture on the slide here, this dog is kind of crouched, right? And their posture is really low. You can see their head is kind of below their back. And they're pretty tense. You can see their lips are pretty tight, and then their ears are back, right? So they look quite uncomfortable, and you can see there's hands on both sides of their body. So they're being forced into that situation, right? And so you can see all of this body language. And if you see any of these behaviors in your puppy, definitely get your dog away and back to a place that's comfortable for them. Another great idea for while you're socializing is actually keeping a training journal, updating it day to day, right, as you're going through different socialization activities, making it really fun for yourself or your family, right, being able to kind of check off the list and go through. And you can also kind of record your puppy's reactions to different things, right? Here you see different types of people, places, and animals, right? So you can record their reactions as maybe a 1, like your puppy was excited and enthusiastic about the experience. 2, your puppy was neutral or unsure. 3, your puppy was scared or stressed. You can kind of think of that analogy of the fence, right? Being on the fence is a 2, and then being on either side is the 1 or the 3. And that just helps you know your progress, right? And be able to keep track, and see how your puppy progresses over time. It's really, rewarding for us to be able to look through that training journal and see how far our puppies have come in the weeks that we've been working with them. And it's also really good to have this sort of a training journal if your puppy or your dog down the road has any kind of behavior problems. This is something that you now have a behavior history to give to your trainer, and some of that can give them really good information on kind of how to help you and what might have caused those behavior problems. All right, does anyone have any questions about those best practices? All right. Well, again, if you think of anything, go ahead and put your question in the chat for Donna. Okay, so now we're going to get into how to socialize our puppies while we're all social distancing, right? There's a lot less opportunity to get out there and get our puppies used to other dogs or people, right? There's just fewer people out. So it's a good idea to, kind of work through these things at a distance, and that is entirely possible. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is playing dress up with your puppy. This can be a lot of fun for you and your dog, and it can help your puppy learn that all different types of people are safe.
try on different outfits to change the way you look, smell, and sound to your dog. Playing dress up teaches your dog that humans come in all shapes, sizes, and smells, and that is nothing to be afraid of. Pair these interactions with treats to ensure that your dog stays calm and creates a positive association with these different types of humans. Your goal is to make sure your dog is having fun. Let them choose to move towards you and then toss treats away to reset them. Avoid moving towards them or trying to lure them if they seem fearful or if they stop taking food. You know your dog is having fun if their bodies remain relaxed and they continue eating those tasty treats. Get creative with your costumes. Borrow clothes from friends and introduce off-season clothing. This way, summer puppies are ready for humans in winter clothing and vice versa.
All right. So yeah, playing dress up is a really great way of getting your dog used to all those different types of outfits and people. And also you can kind of increase the challenge level on this one and move differently as well if your puppy is comfortable. So that's a really good idea as you're going through this exercise. All right, we all want our dogs to be comfortable with household objects like brooms and vacuums. So this video will kind of explain how to do that.
The easiest way to get your dog comfortable around household objects is to click and treat them for remaining calm in their presence. Present the stationary object first, and as your dog remains relaxed, you can introduce movement in small increments. You know your dog is having fun if they continue taking treats and their body remains relaxed, like the soft sweeping tail wag in this video, and if they can look at the object without fixating on it. Start with objects your dog does not already have a negative association with. It's also a good idea to start with objects that don't make as much noise. For something like the vacuum, if you're just introducing it, you want to follow the same steps. Introduce the stationary object, and then you can start to add movement in increments, and only if your dog remains comfortable can you then turn it on and introduce noise. It's a good idea to introduce your dog to any household objects you want them remaining calm around. Do this by using your click treats to reward your dog for either looking at the object and or remaining calm in the presence of the object.
All right. So the main things to remember here is to keep things really still at first, and then when you start moving them, move them away from your dog. That'll be a lot less scary for them than a movement towards them. And like Donna said in the video, not necessarily starting with the vacuum that your puppy might already be scared of, but starting with easier things that are not already scary. Does anyone have any questions about introducing household objects to your puppies? All right. Okay, so next we're going to talk about handling. It's really important for your puppy to be able to enjoy different types of handling, right? We want to create really strong positive associations with every touch, and that prepares them for the vet, potentially for the groomers, right? All of those different things. And the puppy in this video, right, is learning all of this in real time. So this sort of handling is new to her.
Before any handling, you notice that the trainer waits for the dog to move towards them. This is a consent test, allowing the dog to choose to engage in the activity. You'll also notice that any type of handling that does occur is followed up by tasty treats. As we proceed to other types of handling, you'll notice that we always start with a consent test. Our first instances of handling are always brief, and we allow our dog to get comfortable with what our hands are doing before we move on to more invasive types of handling. Observe how the trainer positions themselves at the dog's level, keeping that upper body upright so as to avoid adding spatial pressure by hovering. They're also keeping those treats coming after each point of contact. Paw handling can be particularly challenging for the average dog, so we want to make sure to move slow and steady, ensuring that this is a positive experience. Notice that the trainer waits for consent before lifting the paws. They do that by gently placing a hand on a paw and waiting for any kind of resistance to subside before lifting that paw. The goal is also to then release the paw back to the dog before they are yanking it away. Again, we're following up each paw check with treats. It's critical that we pay attention to our dog's body language, making sure that their body remains relaxed and not tense or defensive. By incorporating consent and rewards, we're teaching our dogs that paw checks are no big deal. In fact, they're quite fun. And we're also teaching our dogs that it pays to cooperate with any kind of handling.
All right, so again, the important things to kind of remember there, right, is just really making sure that your puppy is comfortable, right? The puppy in this video was pretty, okay with all of that contact. There are a couple of times where, she looked a little bit uncomfortable with, maybe around the eyes, right? She kind of pulled away just a little bit. And so really being aware of that and keeping your touches very, very brief at first and then working up from there. All right. Teaching our dogs to be comfortable with brushing is a really useful skill for them, and it will benefit you a lot if your dog will hold still for a nice brush down for the rest of their lives, especially the dogs that will again be going to the groomers, right? And that's a really intense experience, right? So it's good to get our puppies used to all of the handling and grooming that's involved in that. So in this video, again, this is this puppy's first time getting introduced to a brush.
To get our dogs comfortable with brushing, we take the process of brushing them and break it down into smaller steps. We then introduce our dogs to those smaller steps, pairing each step with treats so as to create a positive association. We move at our dog's pace and only proceed to the next step if our dog remains relaxed and comfortable. In this video, the trainer started by presenting the brush first and clicking and treating. So long as the dog is comfortable, the trainer eventually makes contact between the brush and the dog's coat, keeping it brief, short, and sweet.
His tail wags the whole time.
The click occurs when that step in the brushing process ends. So the trainer brushes for one stroke, clicks, then pulls the brush away and offers a treat. As our dog remains relaxed, We can lengthen the brush stroke, or we can brush for longer periods of time before offering the click then treat. As you can see, this process creates a calm and cooperative puppy for brushing.
That's perfect.
All right. Does anyone have any questions about handling or grooming?
Hey, Robyn.
Yes.
We actually have a really great question in the chat from Mina. I hope I said that correctly. And then Mickey was also asking about what we just watched. So we're talking about handling and curious about, how do we go about clipping dog's nails? How do we go about giving a bath? Can you kind of explain a little bit, based on what we just saw with the brush, how we could apply that to maybe some of these other scenarios?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. Nail clipping is one of, I think, the great challenges of being a dog parent. So that's definitely something worth preparing your puppy for. So in this grooming video, we saw the introduction of the brush, right, where we just clicked and treated the dog for sniffing at the brush, moving towards the brush, right, and just making the brush itself a really interesting and rewarding object. And so that's kind of how you would start with things like nail clippers, right, or other different types of tools that you might use with your dog. So again, really making the nail clippers themselves a positive thing. And then also, because nail clipping involves a lot of paw handling, making sure that their paw handling is really good before you introduce the nail clippers as well. So working your way up to the point where you can kind of handle and manipulate each of their toes separately, how you might do it for an actual nail clipping, and then introducing the nail clippers. Maybe the nail clippers get a little bit closer, and then eventually they briefly touch your dog, right? So you're really getting them used to those nail clippers being nearby, being around them before you're ever actually clipping their nails. So it's definitely taking it nice small steps at a time, making it really, really positive, and keeping all those sessions really brief can go a long way in making your puppy happy in those situations. So I hope that answered your question. Were there other questions, Donna?
Yeah, so we've got some follow-up from Mina here. So is the clicker absolutely necessary? Where can we get one? And what might be some alternatives?
Yeah, that's another good question. So the clicker is great because it's really precise. You can click, at the exact moment that, the brush is coming off of the dog, or, when you're handling them. It is not 100% necessary, right? It just adds an extra layer of precision and clarity for your dog to know what they're doing correctly. What the clicker does is kind of bridges that gap of time between when your dog actually does the thing that you want, which in this case is, holding still for the brush to touch them, and then when you can actually get the food to your dog, right? So if you're only getting the food to your dog after you're pulling the brush away, that means that, the brush coming away is what's rewarding. So it's a good idea to be really precise with when you're giving the food, just to make sure that your puppy is really getting rewarded for standing still for that grooming. And you can get clickers at basically, any pet store should have them. We also sell them at our shop at the shelter. So that's worth looking into if that's something you're interested in.
Great, thank you, Robyn. And some more follow-up questions. This is really great discussion because, this is real life. These are things that our dogs have to, they have to endure, so why not make them comfortable with it? As far as, can you just make a clicking sound, was a suggestion from somebody else. Yeah, any kind of marker works. So when Robyn was talking about the timing being very important of whatever that marker is. So it can be a click sound that you make with your mouth. It can be a verbal marker like the word yes. But what is important is that you use some kind of marker, because then it really allows for your dog to understand what's actually happening. and bridging the gap, like Robyn said. Robyn, do you want to touch briefly a little bit on how this applies to a bath, and also maybe adding in there like options in the interim as you're getting your dog comfortable with the bath, to use things like licky mats and stuff like that?
Sure, yeah. So a bath, there's a lot that goes into a bath, right? We have a little bit on that later. We've got a video of kind of how to start your dog getting into the bathtub. But obviously there's more, right, that goes into that. You're going to be kind of scrubbing your dog's fur, right, in kind of a different way than maybe you would if you were just petting them. So that's something to get them used to as far as happy handling goes, right? Just kind of that different sort of rubbing movement. And getting them used to holding still for that, being in water, right? All of those things, taking it really, really slowly, and kind of working, like what Donna mentioned, there are kind of like intermediate steps that you can do until your puppy is ready for the full-on bath. Things like wipe downs instead of a bath, right? Getting kind of like a damp towel as sort of an intermediate step, getting your dog used to having something a little bit more wet, kind of touching their fur, and you moving that around, that can help. And then Donna mentioned the licky mat, and that's a fun thing that you can just kind of suction to the wall of the bath or the shower, right? And put something like peanut butter or some sort of long-lasting, more liquidy treat on there. And they can just stand there and lick that as they're going. And you'll see an example of that in that video as well.
All right, thanks, Robyn. I actually forgot that we have that video in this presentation. So yeah, thank you for the reminder. And just kind of to like summarize all that, because it's a lot of information. What Robyn's emphasizing here is that we take it slow. And so where I see dog parents sometimes miss the mark is we see the dog's uncomfortable and we're like, well, they're not that uncomfortable. And so we keep going. And our goal, like you saw in this video, really is that the dog remains super relaxed at every step before we take it a step further. And yes, Mickey, licky mats are great for getting our dogs through things that they might be a little uncomfortable with, like brushing, bath time, nail trimming, but they're not going to do the counter conditioning work. They're not going to like necessarily make your dog overall learn to just stand still without a licky mat, but they do help you get through it with less stress. So hopefully some of that's starting to kind of come together and make sense. And I will give it back to Robyn to continue with the program.
All right. So our next video is the bathtub video. So you'll go ahead and see Donna's dog Hope getting into the bathtub.
Teach your dog from a young age that bath time is fun. And the easiest way to do that is to introduce them to bath time in just tiny little increments, and always making sure it's a positive experience by pairing that experience with high value food. In this video, we show you how you can use shaping to teach your dog to enjoy bath time. We start by click and treating the dog for moving towards the tub, and then eventually entering it on their own. You'll notice I have a yoga mat down because it makes the tub easier to get into and out of. We want this to be a comfortable experience for our dogs. Although this video has been sped up by 50%, you can still see that the dog's body language is comfortable and relaxed. There's no forcing or luring. My dog is making the choice to go into the tub on her own in hopes of a reward. You can also use tools like a licky mat to give your dog something to do once they're in the tub while they get comfortable with handling. Once we're done, I can use my dog's reliable release cue to let her know bath time is over.
All right, so this is kind of what we were talking about, right? Taking it in really small steps. In this video, there was no water in the tub. It was just working on getting Hope to choose to go into the tub on her own, right? And that's kind of the first step in a bath, and then making every little part of that a positive experience for them, and then sort of combining it all together. And you can see how many treats, right? How many clicks were happening in this video and in the handling videos as well, right? Really looking for rewarding just the tiniest little efforts, right? Towards getting into the tub. Yeah, so does anyone have more questions about the bath and how to get your puppy used to a bath? Okay. All right. So next we're going to talk a little bit about toy swaps. Swapping toys between animals can be a really fun way to, one, stay connected with your friends and family, and two, get rid of your old toys, all while associating unfamiliar dogs with fun things. So this is a great way of kind of introducing your puppy to other dogs' scents without having to go out and about and meet other dogs. So here you can see the toys have just arrived in that package, so the dog gets to nose them around.
Ready for you? Okay, come on. I know. Come on, let's go. What she sees in there? Oh my gosh. We're so excited. We're so excited.
This is a really great way to get our dogs excited about toys that maybe they otherwise wouldn't be that excited about. So that's kind of another benefit of doing something like a toy swap. Does anyone have any questions about the toy swaps? All right. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about playing the Look at That game to help your puppies learn to love something without ever getting too close.
During these times of social distancing, it is still possible to properly socialize your puppy. An easy way to do that is to play the Look at That game. Look at That is exactly as it sounds. Your dog gets a click treat for looking at that. The reason this game is so beneficial is because it allows you to create positive associations with a variety of things in your puppy's environment without your puppy necessarily having to physically engage or get too close to those things. Look at That has a variety of uses. You can click your dog for looking at things from the window, from the front porch. You can click them while you're on walks and they look at things and maintain that calm behavior. You can even do this inside your home when you have guests coming over and you want your dog to practice calm behavior from a distance.
but the back doesn't lift. It's kind of dragging. So when you close, it's kind of tight. I bet you.
Okay.
Kind of.
Okay.
So in that last little video clip, that was Hope kind of behind a baby gate. And every time Hope looked towards the construction worker that was in the house, got a click and a treat for that. So that's kind of an example of the look at that game. Does anyone have any questions about look at that or any of the other socialization topics that we had videos for? All right, Donna, is there anything in chat?
No, we're good, Robyn.
All right. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about our services. We do offer online training classes. Our puppy life skills class has socialization activities in each class. So that's definitely something that, if you're kind of wanting a structure to that, I would encourage you to look into. We also then have our essential life skills class for older dogs. And then we also will offer phone consultations, and then we do have our community connection events like this one. So definitely I encourage you to look into our others and sign up for those. And for some general fun training games and interesting topics, you can check out our Training Tip Tuesday videos on YouTube. And we'll give you links to all of these in the follow-up email that we send as well. So are there any last questions at all, before we close out of this?
Yeah, Robyn, so we have some more questions coming in. It's funny, okay. I was told years ago that it takes us 7 seconds to come up with a question. So I'm glad y'all are bringing great questions to the table. So I'm just gonna kind of go through these one by one. Kind of circling back to the last video, you might want to go back to the look at that slide. It looks like Mickey's asking a little bit about letting workers into the house. What would you recommend as far as the best setup for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it kind of, it depends on the dog, of course, but generally giving your dog some distance, right? Your puppy doesn't need to meet the construction workers. So if you think that they'll get too worked up by it or too afraid, just kind of moving them into maybe a back room where they don't have to hear the workers, putting on some music or something like that so they don't have to be around it. But if you are wanting to kind of work on that and really socialize your puppy to it, a setup like what you saw with Hope with the baby gate is a really good option. So just kind of setting it up so that your puppy is a little bit distant from where the work is going to be happening, but close enough that they can look towards it and go from there. But definitely maybe when the construction worker is first coming into the house, already having your puppy somewhere else behind a gate or in a separate room, just so that they don't have to get into a situation that might be uncomfortable or scary for them.
Yeah, Robyn, I think those are great suggestions. And so something with to think about in terms of Robyn's suggestions with this is, there's management and there's training. So there's setting your dog up in such a way that we're preventing unwanted behavior, even if they've never shown unwanted behavior. So that's why you see my dog behind a baby gate in that video. We're just, making sure that she can't rush or jump or whatever, do any manner of annoying thing towards the person in my home. So that's management, right? She's got a little bit of a barrier, some kind of separation. And then the training was the playing look at that. And always setting your dog up at a distance where they can, if you're gonna train, they can stay in their working brain. If they're barking or just jumping and overly excited, then they're just too close to the scenario is really all that boils down to. So kind of piggybacking off of that, Robyn, we had another question about suggestions for dogs who bark at the door when guests enter the home.
Yeah. So similar to what Donna was just saying about the management and the training, setting your dog up again at a distance from the door, and maybe even in kind of a back room. If you know somebody is coming over, you can kind of plan that, right, and make sure your puppy is somewhere else and occupied while whoever it is comes to the door. And then really working on kind of introducing that person again from a distance, right? So playing the look at that game, or just playing a normal game with your puppy, right? Having a good time while that person is kind of in the house but at a distance. If it's someone that you do want them to eventually get comfortable around and meet, then you can kind of start that process, right, of getting closer, and getting maybe rewards from the stranger depending on how your puppy is doing, right, and just kind of working through that process, but definitely setting it up from the beginning so that your puppy is in a different space and won't be set off barking by the entrance of your guests. Donna, did you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah. So I think those are all great suggestions for like, what do we do when guests are coming over? And so that's thinking about it on the back end, right? Like, well, we know that this, there's potentially barking that happens when people come over. So this is how you manage that situation once it's already presented itself. But thinking proactively, which is really the spirit of this whole presentation, there are also plenty of skills you can teach your puppy or your adult dogs for polite greetings. So we actually have quite a few Training Tip Tuesday videos on those subjects. So we'll be sure to include some of those examples in our follow-up email. But just to give you some ideas, a nose target, where your dog learns to boop their nose, touch their nose to hand. That is really helpful for polite greetings. It's also really helpful if your dog is acting out during greetings because they're scared. That actually is really helpful for those types of dogs as well. Or teaching a settle on a mat. If your dog has a designated place to go and they reliably can go to their bed and wait until they're released, then that's another great skill for them to have when guests come over, where you're not having to do this whole setup of putting them away and barriers and whatnot. But you would have to train those types of skills prior to trying to use them in these situations. And just a little bit of a plug for our group classes here. We do run puppy classes on a regular basis. We do teach you those skills. If that's something you're interested in, then definitely check out our schedule. We also had another question here as well. I love this question about doggy daycare. So what are your thoughts on doggy daycare? Robyn, do you want to start?
Sure. I guess, doggy daycares are a great way of, getting some play in with your dogs. Generally, they'll require, your puppies be vaccinated to a certain level before you can go into the doggy daycare. And some will require them to be spayed or neutered. So definitely kind of checking that before you head to the doggy daycare. But yeah, it can be a good experience. Something to keep in mind though is that might be an overwhelming experience for a puppy's first playtime with another dog, right? There's a lot of dogs in most doggy daycares, especially here in Santa Fe. So it's good to think about that before just taking your puppy to a doggy daycare where they might be really overwhelmed by kind of the number of dogs that are around. So thinking about how you can maybe set up with friends or other people, maybe at sort of outdoor dog park areas or something like that, to meet up with just fewer dogs to begin with, and then work your way up to then taking them to the doggy daycare. Donna, did you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I think you pretty much summarized it. Is really like dog play for puppies is so critical to their development. It's as long as it's age appropriate and healthy play, it's very good. It's good for them to do that in moderation, right? With as with anything else that's good. And so the in moderation is really like the thing that we underline. So every dog daycare is different, both within Santa Fe, and if any of you are logging on from other parts of the country, across the country, they're all very different as well. So it's just a matter of, as far as daycares go, being sure that you're asking the right questions. How big are the play groups? How many, what's the, human to animal ratio in those play groups, thinking of safety, asking them how their process, how will you integrate my puppy into a play group? Does this daycare want them to come on a kind of consistent schedule so they can play with their regular playmates, or is it more of a free-for-all? Ideally, we're creating more of regular play with friends, age appropriate, and we've got a fairly good level of supervision in those play groups. Puppies get breaks during the day, and that we're, even dogs that are really social, they honestly don't need to go to daycare more than like once or twice a week. That can be a lot even for some dogs. So really just having that conversation with the daycare, and getting, pretty involved, I think, in the details of what that looks like for your dog. And likewise, there are other ways, as Robyn mentioned, to create great play situations for your puppy. So friends dogs, we do have a bunch of dog parks in Santa Fe, and we actually later in the year we'll be teaching a community class on dog park safety. So that is an available option, but as with every option, it comes with its own risks. And so it's just really about, are you making sure that there are breaks and my puppy's having fun? Going back to those socialization principles that Robyn talked about, keeping it short and sweet, and so forth. So yeah. At this time, I don't see, let's see, I say that and then somebody popped right back in here. We've got another question coming in. So any tips for helping a dog and cat to get along? It sounds like, Josh, your dog is friendly and just wants to play, but maybe the cat wants nothing to do with the dog, or vice versa. And I'm going to give that question to Robyn, and then we'll just wrap up here just in the interest of time. So for those of you, if you do need to leave right on time, no worries. We look forward to seeing you next time. And then if you have any other questions, you'll get a recap from us later today, and you can follow up with us there. But yeah, Robyn, do you want to talk about dog to cat integration?
Sure, definitely. Yeah. So this is, kind of a difficult topic, I think, to briefly summarize, because it can be so nuanced with dogs and cat introductions. But it's a good idea to kind of go at the pace of the animal that's having the most trouble, right? So it sounds like your cat might be upset more than your dog. And so in that case, going at the pace of your cat, right? If your cat's not comfortable, keeping your puppy separated from the cat, allowing the cat exit routes so they can move away if they need to, and can get away, like maybe go into vertical spaces, right? That the puppy can't get to. Just making sure that your cat is comfortable is going to go a long way in kind of helping smooth that over. And then on the dog side of it, really teaching your dog to be calm, and rewarding them for any calm behaviors, lying down, looking at you, anything like that, so that while your cat is kind of acclimatizing to your dog being around, you're working with your dog on just being able to be calm and not so playful potentially with the cat. Because it sounds like your cat's uncomfortable with that. And then also, as far as management goes, keeping them separate, and making it positive for the cat as well, right? You want kind of make that association more positive for the cat than it might be currently. But again, this is something that's really, really nuanced. So, you know, if you're having a lot of troubles with that, we do offer phone consultations. So you can reach out for a phone consultation, or you can just work with another trainer, right? Maybe even a cat trainer, right? Since your cat is also having troubles with it. So yeah, really kind of coming at it from those different angles, but making sure that you're giving your cat and your dog space from each other.
All right, Robyn. Yeah, that's the best way to summarize that. It is definitely a hefty topic. I think we're going to have a whole community class on dog to cat integration later this year as well. But really great summary. So I will just let you close.
All right. Well, thank you all again so much for coming here and being part of our presentation. It was a really great discussion around socialization. So thank you for all of your questions. And again, if you need any more help, you can reach us here at the number and the email address listed on the screen. And a last big thank you to Purina for making classes like this possible. And if you guys found, you know, any of this information very helpful, please consider donating so that we can continue to provide these services free of charge for our community. So again, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you got a lot of good information. So we appreciate your support. All right, bye everyone.